To welcome our speaker tonight. I'd like to welcome our speaker tonight, Rachel Williams, who is the founder of Stand Up to Domestic Abuse and also ambassador and facilitator of the Freedom Programme. I first encountered Rachel when I was given a copy of her book entitled The Devil at Home, which relates her personal experiences, and I found it both thought-provoking and incredibly moving. Rachel will speak for 30 minutes, which will be followed by a period for questions and answers. So over to you, Rachel. Lovely to see you at last.
Thank you, Eileen. So what I thought, ladies, because I've got so much to talk about, and normally I like an interview because people can get different elements of my story and my history. So what I thought I would do, I've got a short DVD which actually shows the events that happened in my life around domestic abuse. It was a reenactment of my story which Judge Rinder covered, which I think is very powerful, and I use it to show a lot of the police and magistrates, and they all say it's a very powerful story. So I think instead of me just saying my story, I think if we watch that and then we can have a lovely Q&A at the end of it.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Yes. Right.
Rachel, I'll make you a co-host and you should be able to share your screen.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Helen. There we go. I think it'll come up now. Can we all see, ladies?
Yes.
Yeah. It's coming on. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
When 21-year-old single mother of one, Rachel Williams, fell for her neighbor's brother, little did she know, years down the line, that their romance would have devastating consequences. Rachel Williams almost instantly felt a spark when she was introduced to 28-year-old bouncer Darren.
I can remember getting friendly with a girl across the road. I'd gone over for a cuppa, and it was then I met Darren, and that was her brother. He was quite a character. He was a big guy, but he was really quite witty. He used to always make jokes and make you laugh, you know, that sort of character. And I remember thinking, oh, he's really nice.
Darren was quite well known in their hometown of Newport, Wales, not least because of his appearance.
He was 6'7", and at the time he was about 18 stone. He was really into fitness and bodybuilding. Being 5'8" myself, it was nice to have somebody, you know, a little bit taller.
Very well known. I don't think there was anybody in Newport that don't know him. Because obviously being a doorman, picking people out of pubs and whatever, yeah, everybody knew him. Lots and lots of people know him, or of him. He's always been known as a hard man, if you like. Nobody messed with him.
It was great. We had, you know, fun. He was a gentle giant.
The couple were enjoying spending time together, and a few months into the relationship, they were invited round to a friend of Rachel's.
I can remember my friend mentioning an ex-boyfriend of mine, and I could see Darren sort of look. Nothing was said. And then we were walking home, and Darren became jealous, questioning me about my past. And I said, it's none of your business. And at that point, I can remember falling down and landing headfirst in a bush of stingy nettles, turning around, expecting Darren's hand to be sort of there to help me up. And he'd gone, he'd walked off. And I can remember getting up then and walking behind him almost like a wounded puppy and questioning, did he push me or did I actually slip? And then the next day then he was knocking at the door with a bouquet of flowers and really sorry and apologetic. And he said, you know, I don't know what came over me. I just felt really jealous. I still sort of questioned whether it was a slip or a push. So I didn't want to quite believe that he would do something like that.
The relationship did get back on track, and almost 2 years to the day that they'd first met, their son Jack was born.
When I found out I was pregnant, Darren was really excited. He didn't have any children. He was getting closer to 30. Both of us was excited, and obviously Josh looking forward to having a sibling as well.
Jack was so handsome as a baby. He had the biggest blue eyes.
With 2 young boys, this should have been a happy time for the couple. But Rachel was starting to realise that Darren's hard man reputation was accurate, and his moods were now determining their existence.
You could never sort of pinpoint really when Darren was going to be in a mood. It is that typical walking on eggshells because you don't know when the next outburst is going to come. You know he'd had a bad day because he'd open the front door and his gym bag would come flying through the door first. And then you'd think, oh, great, you know. So then you've got to try and pacify him. Darren controlled my working life and my social life. I was never allowed to go out on a night out. I was a hairdresser. I wasn't allowed to cut men's hair.
That's really how coercive control starts. It's with this plausible story of jealousy. Don't do that, it'll make me jealous. And the other person thinks, well, I don't want to make them jealous. I don't want to do anything to hurt them. So they start just doing as they're told.
He always wanted my hair short. And when I did grow it one time, he said, you know, look, nothing but a mess, cut it off. And you do anything to please him, to pacify him, because you just don't want the hassle and the aggro.
People like Rachel who are caught in that bubble of coercive control will be managing it constantly.
It's not as easy as just go, because you know there's going to be a consequence. Darren always used to say to me, there's only one way out for you, and that's in a wooden box. There was no point getting other people involved because there was nothing anybody could do. It was just a case of, you've got to deal with this yourself. Nobody else is going to be able to help you. And I just had to just try and manage it as best I could.
Unaware of the extent of Darren's control over Rachel, it was several years into the relationship before sister Natalie witnessed a true glimpse of the conditions that her sister was living under.
At one stage, they bought a burger van. I worked on that, at the docks with them.
I was late bringing the bread rolls down by about 5 minutes because there was a train crossing through the docks, so I couldn't get in.
Well, the next thing I heard a puller. He went absolutely berserk. The rolls went up in the air.
He gripped me by the throat, pushed me around the corner and said, where the hell have you been?
You're watching something before your eyes, but yet there's not a damn thing you can do about it. The only person that can do anything would have been Rachel herself.
Rachel became grateful when Darren was away from home pursuing his hobbies, which involved various forms of violence.
Darren used to go out ferreting and rabbiting, but I later found out that he used to fox and badger baiting as well.
Darren did hurt animals. He was quite a cruel person, and that lack of compassion probably puts him somewhere on the psychopathy spectrum.
Darren always had a fascination with weapons, and he always used to keep like knives and stuff like that for hunting.
It was this fascination that put Darren behind bars in 2004 for possession of an illegal firearm.
The police come and searched the house. They found Darren's arsenal of weapons, which consisted of stun guns, flick knives, hunting knives, and CS gas, and a 2.2 pistol. received 4 months for it. I gotta be honest, I enjoyed it while he was in prison because the house was so peaceful.
Probably chase her around.
When they go into prison, they lose a huge amount of control. What can they do to bring the victim back in, to make sure that victim stays attached to them? They up their game.
Darren proposed to me from his prison cell. And he said, I think I want to marry you, so we're going to get married. There's no way I could have said no to him.
The couple married soon after Darren's release.
If we look at my wedding photos with Darren, it's so evident how frightened I was of him because there was never that close contact. He's always got his arm around me like I'm his prize. When I look back now, it's so blatantly obvious.
The relationship continued as it had, but Darren's use of steroids, in addition to his prescribed medication for long-standing depression, further exacerbated his temper. And despite seeking help, which Rachel supported, 6 years after the wedding and 18 years after they'd first met, things finally came to a head.
Me and Dan had had a real big argument, and I remember looking out in my garden and I had tears streaming down my face. And then the next thing then I felt him breathing down my neck. And he said, what are you going to do then? You going to leave? And I said, yeah, I am going to leave. I said, I've had a guts full of you. And as I walked into the kitchen, I felt his hands around my neck. And at that point, he started shaking me, strangling me really ferociously. I looked up and both of my boys were in the room, and Jack had a baseball bat in his hand and Josh was doing a silent 999 call.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
And he just broke down then crying, saying he was sorry, the usual stuff. And then Darren grabbed my two hands and started pulling me up the stairs. We got up in the bedroom and he grabbed a knife.
Oh, don't be so stupid. I'll do it. No, you won't.
And with that, Jack came out of the bedroom and he said, what's he doing? And I said, go on, keep your wrist in front of your 16-year-old son, thinking I would shame him and he'd put it back in the drawer.
He's done it, Mum. Mum, he's done it.
I thought, if he's capable of doing that in front of his son, what else is he capable of doing? And that was when I made the decision, I've got to get out of it. I've got to do everything I can to get out of this relationship.
Coming up.
The court heard that he went into the hairdresser's, pulled out a double-barreled shotgun. He then told her that he loved her and shot her twice.
For 18 years, Rachel Williams had endured husband Darren's physical and mental abuse. But after a particularly bad assault on the 9th of July 2011, which also saw Darren try to end his life in front of their son Jack, Rachel decided once and for all that she was leaving.
Oh, don't be so stupid. He's done it, Mum. Mum, he's done it.
She had left him before, and she'd always go back. I'm sorry, he was always sorry, always sorry. But when a week had gone by, I knew she meant business this time.
I just want to get divorced and move on and him to leave me alone. But that was never going to happen. You know, Darren always said, you know, we're going to be together in this life and the next. I mean, he used to write that in cards.
The point at which you decide to leave is the most dangerous point in that relationship. And Rachel would have known that. It's why victims don't just leave.
Something was going to happen. I knew it.
He was constantly phoning me, constantly texting me, sat outside my place of work. In the end, I was so broken down by him, I had to give a statement. I had to go along with the police and I had to get him out of my life.
Darren was questioned and released on bail pending a police investigation. And whilst Rachel knew this wouldn't be the end of her troubles, she decided it was time to start living again.
I can remember texting my sister and saying, "Oh, do you fancy coming to Cardiff for a night out?" And she phoned me, she goes, "Shut up."
And that's the first time I've been out with my sister in, well, it probably was the first time.
And I'd met somebody on that night out. Darren found out about it. And I think that's what tipped him over the edge.
Mum, you've got to listen to me.
Jack phoned me and said he's going to kill him and he's going to kill the guy and he's not going to go to prison for it.
He's going to get you, Mum, please.
My take on that is he's going to kill himself as well.
Rachel reported these threats to the police, and Darren was taken in for questioning and charged for the 9th of July assault. Once again, he was released on bail.
Yeah, it looks like it's...
Let's move away.
7 days later, on the 19th of August 2011, Rachel was at work.
It was a sunny morning. I shouldn't have even been working that day, but I was covering a colleague's day off. My boss said to me, "How are you feeling?" I said, "Great, I really feel like I got my life back." And I was cutting a lady's hair and the shop went quite dark. So I looked to see what was obscuring the sunlight and it was Darren.
Oh, God. What a duct.
As he's pushing the door open and walking through.
Oh, my God.
Bag. And I don't know why, I just ran towards him and I started grappling with him.
Darren, what are you doing?
And then he hit me with the butt of the gun. I had the presence of mind to pull my knees up under my chin and I said to him, think of Jack, trying to reason with him. And at that point, he was about 4 foot away from me and he just pointed the gun to my chest and told me he loved me. Thankfully, my left leg took the first shot. And then the next thing, I felt a blast to the right of me. I remember looking down at my legs because there was a huge hole in my jeans. And then I looked to the left of me and this gun had been put down. And there was a pretty hefty battle and he just rained me with blows.
What are you doing?
So then the next thing, he was gone.
He went into the hairdresser's carrying a black hodl. Almost immediately, he pulled out a double-barreled shotgun and shot her twice.
I wasn't told any more apart from she'd been shot. A police officer rang me and he said, "Don't go back to your house. Don't go anywhere where he would think about looking for you. You need to just lie low now." And I'm like, "I want to get to the hospital to see my sister." He's like, "It's not even possible right now."
I had his boot mark embedded as a bruise in my arm. I had 4 of his fingers embedded as bruises in my back. My left ear had to be slit 7 times because it was like a huge cauliflower ear.
We think in this instance the best thing, unfortunately, I think to have your leg amputated.
No.
I can remember the surgeon saying, "You've got so much damage to your leg, you've lost all your shin bone, it's dust." Laying in bed, high on the morphine, and I could do this with my foot. I remember saying to him, it's not broke. All the surgeon could salvage was my kneecap. He said the rest was a mess. But I've still got my leg. I knew Darren was on the run. I knew they were all looking for him. We had police in the hospital for fear of him coming into the hospital. And then I can remember a police officer coming in, I think it was about 7, 8 o'clock at night, and saying to me,
Rachel, we have found Darren.
he was found hanging from a tree. Obviously took his own life, and that was that. But it was such a relief. I didn't think about my leg. All I can remember thinking about was I was free.
So we're obviously not grieving for Darren. I couldn't have cared at that point. My main concern was Rachel. But then my heart went out to Jack as well. At the end of the day, it's his father, you know?
When I was in hospital, Jack just became really distant. And there was just such a breakdown between myself and Jack, and even Jack and his brother Josh.
I think he felt torn in the fact that obviously he loved his dad because he was his dad, and because obviously Rachel had been shot by his father. It was devastating.
After 6 weeks in hospital, Rachel was released. She hadn't seen Jack since he'd visited her on the day of the shooting.
I've had no contact with Jack. I tried to ring his phone and he had a new phone number. And then on the Monday I had a phone call from the police asking if I'd seen Jack, and I said no. So me and my sister jumped in the car and I went looking at places where I thought he could possibly be. And Jack's best friend's mum rang me.
Could you hear this woman on the phone, and she was hysterical. And she said they found him, they reckon he's hanging in the woods.
He'd done exactly the same as what Darren did. You just go numb. I mean, never did I realise and ever think one man's actions, you know, would cost a 16-year-old boy to take his life. We just want to remember him for what he was, and he was a laugh a minute. He was very kind-hearted. He had potential as well. He was a very bright boy that was just brought up in such a toxic environment.
Jack's death was a tragedy, and Rachel has shown great strength in rebuilding her life in the aftermath of such adversity, largely for the good of others.
I want to be the voice for those who no longer have a voice. 2 women a week die at the hands of an abuser, and 200 women take their lives every year to escape an abuser. And I think since I've started to become active and campaigning for this cause, I have certainly seen more awareness, and we owe it to the next generation, the other Jacks out there, teaching them healthy relationships.
She was left on this earth for a purpose. And if she can help people, she will.
Rachel has several online petitions looking to change specific laws linked to domestic abuse. And along with attending conferences and campaigning, she's even written her own book.
It's really sort of educating people who don't know what domestic abuse looks like. If somebody wants to know why they don't leave, what coercive control is, you'll get the gist of it from my book.
She is absolutely amazing. She's an inspiration, and I am so proud. What I will say to people is, you can get out. You just got to make sure that you do it safely.
So that is my story, ladies. Oh, just come back on 2 seconds. Let's get rid of this. It is hard hitting, which is, and it's a powerful story. But you know, I vowed after the shooting and after losing Jack that I wouldn't be silenced, and I would share my story to help other women who find themselves in abusive relationships. And I've been doing a lot since then. It's the 10th anniversary this year of the shooting, which was in August. and the 10th year of Jack's death on the 26th of this month. And I've got an online event, because I should have had one in the Celtic manner to celebrate, but obviously COVID came and put a spin on that. So 1,000 tickets have gone, so we're at full capacity, and is spreading the awareness to others as well. And I've got online petitions, as mentioned in my video as well. And one of my petitions was around non-fatal strangulation, because I was strangled quite regularly by Darren. And I know a lot of other women get strangled or throttled, and then it started to be used as a defence in rough sex defences for homicides. So myself, I started a petition with over 100,000 signatures, and a couple of other people as well were campaigning, and we clubbed together and we managed to get it as a standalone offence now. So as of May next year, it will be a standalone offence carrying up to 5 years imprisonment. So that is a big achievement. And I've got other campaigns as well online, and I'm always challenging those in power when and where I can. So yeah, so I'm doing quite a lot in the domestic abuse arena. Since June last year, I've had over 500 women sign up to my Freedom Programme, which is an 11-week recovery programme to educate the women, and so they can understand what they were in, and to look for the traits, the different behaviours, the patterns in abusive men, so then they can, they can see that before they get into relationships with them. But yeah, they're very, very manipulative. I've had lots of women come to me who have been like GPs, social workers, magistrates, solicitors, who have all sadly found themselves with abusive partners, abusive men. So it can happen to anybody. Any questions, ladies?
I think we're all pretty stunned, to be honest.
Yeah, but I am. Yeah, but it's funny because I like to lift it back up then, because it is hard hitting. And I vowed, after the shooting and after reading my serious case review and my IPCC report, I mean, we were, as a family, we were failed miserably by the police, by social services. We were really failed. I mean, the lay magistrates kept releasing Darren, even though he had a history of anxiety, depression. He threatened to kill me. He had a history of firearms. He was even a serial perpetrator, which was on his file. I didn't know, but this all came out after the shooting. It was there for everybody to see. And that's why I do what I do, because it's like, when the police have got the intel and they got all this information on perpetrators, they need to be speaking to other services and joining up the dots. And, like I said, the lay magistrates sadly lifted all the bail restrictions before the shooting, the day before the shooting. And it was ironic, because my mum had written to the police and said, if they release him, release the bail restrictions, she said, I'm telling you now, she said, you're signing my daughter's death certificate. And they had that the day of the shooting. Sylvia, you've got your hand up, lovely.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say, really, the interesting thing is, I mean, I worked in the probation service for many years. And one of the interesting things was that people who were abused, not in the way maybe that you were abused, but people who were domestically abused went back to the same men over and over again. And that was very difficult to understand.
Yeah, and this is what police say as well, and it's so interesting. And I've been training the police up in Lancashire and Blackpool on 5 different dates. And I say, ask those questions. Why do you go back? And I said, it is quite interesting because we always focus on the victim. Why do you go back, instead of saying, actually, why is he being abusive? Why is he perpetrating abuse? But victims go back, and like myself, because they don't feel protected. And the law, sadly, probably 8 times out of 10, actually don't support the victim enough to be able to carry on with that prosecution. They don't feel supported. They don't feel protected. Restraining orders, for instance, Sylvia, I've got a petition on restraining orders and license conditions. I've not spoken to one victim whose perpetrator has adhered to that piece of paper to say you're not to go within 500 yards of that woman. So you're trying to ask an abuser who really doesn't care anything for the law, who's quite happy to beat his partner up, then all of a sudden to become a decent member of society and adhere to these rules on a piece of paper, and they just don't do it. And they get breached all the time, constantly, and nothing gets done. It gets to court, goes back to court. And I know from personal experience, I've got a restraining order on somebody, a member of Darren's family, who's in his 70s, who keeps trolling me on social media, and he's breached his restraining order 4 times and he still has not been given a custodial sentence. So there's lots of different facets, Sylvia, but it is, you know, and I say to the police, you know, I got a stepsister and she found herself in an abusive relationship. And even I was getting frustrated with her because I could actually help her and I knew the right people. But then I equally as well, I understood why she kept going back, because the fear of him, you know, and I say to people, you know, for me, I left when the fear of staying with him became greater than the fear of leaving him. And I just thought to myself, wow, if I don't get out of this now, I am going to die. Joyce or Leslie?
Yeah, Rachel, had you thought at any time of going into a women's refuge? I know it's a drastic step to have to take, but you would be safe there.
Yeah, but nobody ever, Joyce, nobody ever, or Leslie, whichever one you were, nobody ever gave me that option. And I never phoned the police very often. There tend to be silent calls of the police. The police never come, you know, they come to the house and I would open the door, and after I was told, you've got to say there's nothing wrong. So I would say, oh, you know, everything's fine. Nobody ever thought, let's go back in a couple of days when he's in work to see if everything is okay. Perhaps she's saying everything's fine because he told her he's going to punch her face in when the police go, you know, and nobody ever did. And it's funny because as a family, we weren't invisible. I can remember the morning when Darren strangled me and slit his wrist in front of Jack, the police was called because obviously he'd slit his wrist and, you know, and he threatened to kill himself. And 2 young police officers come to the house. Darren was upstairs and I was in the conservatory, physically not looking great. And I had all makeup down my face. I had my dressing gown up like that, you know, trying to hide all of the bruises around my neck where I'd just been strangled. And I opened the door to the police and they said, where is he? And I said, upstairs. They run up the stairs and I could hear Darren telling them, get out of my effing house. They run then back down the stairs, come into the conservatory, poked their head in, looked at me and said, is everything okay? Clearly everything's not okay. There's Darren upstairs with his wrist slit and I'm in the conservatory looking like I've just been pulled through an edge backwards. And I went, because I was too frightened to say anything, and they left. Never. So
one of the things you might campaign about is making people more aware of women's refuge.
Yeah, and that's another thing. During COVID, you know, do you know how many refugees we've got in the whole of the UK?
No, not many, I suppose.
It's under 200 now compared to 1,500 animal shelters.
Oh God, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
and you would not believe that in Wales alone, the amount of women and children get turned away because there's no room in the inn.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Francis?
Oh. I was going to ask, in your childhood, how were you brought up? What was your relationship with your parents?
Yeah, so my mum had me quite young. She was 17 when she had me. I think I was a bit of a shock, and her father was quite strict. But yeah, you know, I did have a lovely childhood. I was a bit of a St. Trinian, I would say, Eileen. You read the book. I was, you know, a little bit strong-spirited, but I think, you know, had I not been strong-spirited and everything else, I don't think I'd be here today sharing this story.
No, true.
Yeah, but yeah, my childhood was lovely. You know, I didn't want for anything. My mum. Go on.
Can I ask you, what was the relationship like between your mother and father?
Now this is interesting, and this is all in the book as well. So my real dad, I would say, is a bit of a waster, as in he was a womanizer. And I always say to people, he would get in where a draft wouldn't. So we'll just leave it at that. So he had a few women on the go, and there's a few half siblings dotted around. And I didn't meet him till I was 29. But the guy who adopted me is my sister, who was on the video, on the film clip. He was in my life probably for probably 12 years, and him and my mum ended up splitting up. But there was a few rows in the household. Obviously they were both fairly young as well, and it was probably quite challenging. But other than that, it was, you know, I can't say that I had a bad childhood. And I had, you know, good relationships with my mum, and even my real dad now. He's back on the scene like Casanova. But yeah, takes all sorts, I suppose. Leslie, Joyce, I don't know which one which.
Leslie, yeah.
I just have to say how appalled I am at everything you've had to suffer in terms of your son and your husband and so on. And I think it's been very, very brave of you, what you're obviously doing to promote to sort of help people in similar circumstances to maybe take on a wider perspective from your own personal experience. I applaud you, I really do. It's shaken me up. And I think you're absolutely superb. Also, what I would suggest, since you obviously didn't get much benefit from having the police come to the house, maybe Sir Optimus could have a meeting with somebody from the local police to discuss the other side of things, so we can see it from both
the law is tying their hands, I don't know.
Yes, but it makes me think that. So you're just amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The petitions I got running online at the moment, I just started another petition around gun licensing law after that awful shooting in Plymouth. So that like I said, you know, because there's so many abusive men with firearms. Women contact me who's been in abusive relationships, and they haven't wanted him to have a gun, but nobody's ever asked the partners, are you happy for him to have a gun in the house? No, it's really shocking. So I've just released that, and I'm going to do a story with the Mirror, and they're going to publish nearly 1 million signatures on all my petitions, which is really good. But yeah, so it is and I'm remarried, and he's a lovely guy. He's my knight in shining faith by being with Mike, because I do believe God saved me that day to you know, he had in this raising awareness and helping other women as well. And it's funny because my husband now, Mike, because the injury to my leg was so bad that they had to put my middle calf muscle down in Swansea, Morrison Hospital, put my middle calf muscle up into the hole, because there was obviously a huge hole in my leg. And Mike says to me, oh my goodness, if they'd have put your tongue muscle in your leg, he said you'd be running a marathon. Helen, have your hand up, Helen? Yeah.
Yes, I have, Rachel. We've, as Sir Optimus, we've worked quite closely with Women's Aid, particularly in our own area here in Bridgend, as well as supporting you on the petitions and so on. What do you think we could be doing to take this forward? What would be your advice to us?
I think it's just, you know, not being scared to talk about it. And I think it has got better over the years since I've been campaigning and active in this arena. You know, I don't think people, it's not that taboo subject anymore like it used to be. And the oldest woman I've heard that left her abusive partner was 93.
Oh.
Yeah, you know, and I said, you know what, and people are like, oh, you know, perhaps she should have, you know, why'd she leave and I said, listen, even if she had 6 months of freedom, it would have been worth it for that, you know. And I think it's just raising awareness, talking about it, you know, not being scared. And I always say to the ladies that come on my Zooms with my program, just remember, you know, the shame lies at the feet of the perpetrator. And during COVID, obviously, you know, things got really ramped up, and we were really concerned for the women. And I always say the women, because even though I know men do get abused, the majority of men that do get abused is by same-sex relationships. And when you look at the stats and the figures around crime, you know, 92%, I think it is, of perpetrators of abuse that end up in court are male, whether that's same sex or in a heterosexual relationship. So I say, you know, men are the problem. Men do need changing, and men need to encourage those good men to stand up with us to say, you know, it's not right to be, you know, making your wife the butt of your jokes down the pub. No, it's not right to be controlling her movement. You know, it's not right to stop her, you know, working or going out socializing with friends, you know. And there's a lot of it that does go on. And like I said, that 93-year-old woman just had enough, and she went into a refuge, and, you know, good on her. And she was picked up in her doctor's surgery, which was really good. Yeah, so just talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You were on television recently, quite recently actually, campaigning about the service for dentistry that's not available to abused women. I only caught the end of it. How is that going, and what are you achieving there?
So I feel like, Eileen, it's funny because people that know me in the sector, that I feel like I'm like Arthur Daly in the domestic abuse world, because I got my fingers in all different pies. So I got all campaigns going, you know, and then somebody will say something to me. I think, oh, I wonder if I could start that. So this one lady contacted me, and she had really bad teeth from the abuse she suffered, and she couldn't afford a dentist, and the waiting list was awful. And she said, did I know a dentist that could help with her teeth? And I said, sadly I don't, because it was something that, you know, out of all the injuries I had, I never even had a chipped tooth. I know I had my leg nearly had to have it amputated, but seeing Darren stamped all over my head 22 stone, you know, I didn't even have a chipped tooth. I was quite worrying. I must have a head like a breeze block, ladies, that's all I can say. But so this woman, I said, you know, I will ask. So I went onto Twitter and I put a tweet out, and this lovely lady contacted me, and she said, I'll pay for her treatment. And I said, listen, I said, it's cosmetic, it's gonna cost thousands. She said, I don't care, I'll pay for it. She said, I was abused. Yeah, she said, I was abused as a child, she said, by my mother. And she said, my mother has died and left me this inheritance. She said, and I want to put it to good use. So she said, I will pay for the treatment. So I was like, oh my goodness. So I got over this lady. I said, you're not going to believe this. And ironically, the lady who said she paid for it, her name was Claire, and she's a Christian as well. So we had a nice conversation about that. And I said, this lovely lady has come forward and said she's going to pay for it. And this woman just burst out crying. And she's finished the treatment now. And that was picked up by quite a few media outlets. And I think they shared the story somewhere, and the victim stayed anonymous. And then I had another lady a couple of months later then contact me and say, oh, do you know anybody that does dentistry work for free? And I said, I don't. I thought there's a running theme here. So I thought, right, what can I do? So I put a little tweet out and said, you know, I think we need to see if, you know, we can get some dentists on board that will do free treatment, you know, for victims and survivors of domestic abuse and violence. And then Nicole Jacobs, the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, she said, you know, I'll help if I can. And I was like, great, because it's like, well, where do you even start? And then I got a great guy that's based in Cardiff, Aid, and his business is called Locality Solutions, and he's an IT expert. So he runs my website for me for free, which is brilliant. So we said, I'll come on board and see what we need to do, if we need to do any software, you know, because obviously if these women are going to be feeding in, and the dentist is, you know, we need to make it simple. And then all of a sudden I had this guy Martin message me on Twitter, and he was the chief exec of the British Dental Association, and he's like, you know, I'd like to be involved and help. So then it was covered on BBC Breakfast, and then all of a sudden I had an influx from dentists saying we give our free time, dental nurses saying we give our free time. So I've got a list of dentists now, and we're trying to sort of pull it together how best it would work. And I think it would be, because you are going to get the chances, you know, people coming forward saying, no, I'm a victim, and it's not, it's just they don't want to pay, or what are the lies they might make up. So I think it's best if we use the domestic abuse services and the women go through there, and then we know they are genuine, and not trying to, you know, rinse our little organization that we're going to set up. So that's in the making at the moment. So I'm hoping, you know, to 6 to 8 months it might be up, and so it will be a national dentistry register for victims and survivors of domestic abuse. Yeah.
Oh, that's marvellous, absolutely marvellous.
And I started another one. And I've started another one as well, Eileen. So somebody else came to me, do you know any really good solicitors who deal with domestic violence? And I was like, well, what area are you in? And they are hard to find, because you know, to get somebody that's knowledgeable about domestic abuse and coercive and controlling behaviour, and to understand how perpetrators of abuse tick, because they're so manipulative, and to have like training. So I was like, oh, I wonder if we could start something on that. And I keep saying we as if I got a team, but it's just me. And I've got 2 volunteers that help out now and again. So I put it on my Facebook page and on Twitter, you know, shall I start a register, a survivor-led database for solicitors and barristers? And then I had a lovely lady contact me from another organisation. She said, do you want a hand? I was like, yes, please. So she's doing a bit of the legwork as well, because she's from a legal background. So we're collating this. So I think so far, before we launch it, because we've got to check everything's all in place, I think we've got about 30 solicitors in different areas that have been recommended already by those that have used them in family court or in criminal court. So yeah, so we're slowly going to be building a register then for those really good solicitors and barristers.
Wow, well, this could go on all night, I think.
Oh.
I completely admire your spirit and your positive attitude. So at this point, I'm going to have to ask our immediate past president, Sharon Dixon, to give you a vote of thanks.
Wow. It's not often I'm lost for words, Rachel. But what a story. And what an incredible journey you've been on. You know, suffering 18 years of abuse. I'm not talking 18 months or 5 years. This is 18 years of abuse. I had the opportunity to read your book, The Devil at Home. So powerful. And the video that you shared with us as well was very powerful. And it's interesting how you described Darren as a gentle giant, 6'7", always apologetic after the event. And you were always the one trying to pacify him. I just can't imagine. And I can't believe that it's been 10 years. And not only did you go through that an incredible event, but you also lost your precious son. When Jack went, I'm sure, such a tragedy, and your strength is amazing, absolutely amazing. You've certainly touched my heart, and I have no doubt you've touched the hearts of everybody here tonight. Please continue to do what you're doing. It's an incredible job. All of the petitions, everything that you're, you know, getting involved in. And I like the idea that you have your finger in lots of pies, because that's the person who's going to get it done. If you want something done, ask a busy person. So please continue to help others, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us tonight. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, ladies. Thanks for having me. And yeah, just like I said, just keep talking about it, because the more we talk about it, you know, the more in the open it'll be. And like I said, I spoke in a couple of schools in Cardiff actually, and I could tell straight away those children that were living in that environment. And I had a couple of girls come up to me after and saying, you know, that their father had been abusive to their mums. So yeah, it's everywhere, and we do owe it to the next generation, and it's all about education, and that's key. All right then, ladies. Well, I love you and leave. I'm going to go back and watch Handmaid's Tale. I'm slow to watching that, and I'm absolutely hooked.
Rachel, we will make a contribution to you, and I'm sure Eileen will have a conversation with you around that. But thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. Have a lovely rest of the evening. See you again.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Wow.
I'll close the curtains. Ladies, I'll stop the recording now, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Helen.